Welcome to Safety Tavern's video on fire safety. And before I start talking, let's talk to an expert.
Hi, my name is Kelly Webb. I'm with the Asheville Fire Department, and today we're here to talk about the use of portable fire extinguishers. We're going to discuss how to use them and when to use them, and then hopefully if you're ever put in that situation that you might encounter a fire, you might feel a little more comfortable using the portable fire extinguisher. Now, depending on what kind of fire you encounter will actually determine which type of extinguisher you use. But to make things more simple, we're just going to talk about the fact that there is a portable fire extinguisher called a multi-purpose extinguisher. That multi-purpose extinguisher will cover pretty much any type of fire that you would encounter. Now, what I teach you today is not just for business purposes, but it's also for your personal life. So, the things that we talk about not only would help you in your day-to-day activities at work, but if you're out shopping, if you're at a child care center or something like that, pretty much whatever fire extinguisher is hanging on the wall will put out any fire you would encounter in that situation. Please do understand that the portable fire extinguisher is for the beginning stage of a fire, meaning if you encounter the fire within the first few minutes of it, that you could probably put it out with that fire extinguisher. But if a fire has been burning for 5 or 10, 15 minutes, and you're wondering whether or not that fire extinguisher will put it out, it probably won't. So if you're ever in doubt, please just get out. Your safety is definitely our first concern, and we want you to leave the firefighting to the firefighters. I make the joke that you do not see firefighters running into a burning building with portable fire extinguishers because that's not what they are designed to do. So please understand that it is for the very beginning stage of a fire. For instance, if you encounter a trash fire, child playing with matches, or perhaps you've started a fire on the top of a stove, that's when you want to be able to grab your portable fire extinguisher and put the fire out. Otherwise, like I said, your safety is our first concern. Please get out, call 911, and leave the firefighting to the firefighters. Now, fire extinguishers pretty much all look the same. They're this beautiful red color. We have a handle. That's what you can carry it by, and it's actually the top portion of the handle, the trigger, that will emit the agent. They all have a safety pin in there, and that safety pin is tied on by a zip tie, and that's so that somebody doesn't accidentally lose that safety pin or a child tampers with the extinguisher, accidentally setting it off. They have some type of a nozzle or hose depending on the size of the extinguisher. They all should have a gauge, and this gauge is very important because the gauge is going to let you and me know whether or not this extinguisher is ready to use. If the gauge shows that the yellow arrow is in the green area, meaning it's charged and ready to go, then as far as you and I know that this is ready and it can be used. Otherwise, if you notice that the yellow arrow has dropped below the green, that means the extinguisher has lost charge for whatever reason and cannot be used. So please, if you ever notice an extinguisher that the yellow arrow has dropped out of the green, get it off the wall immediately, call maintenance, call whoever might be in charge of that extinguisher, and have them replace it immediately. If you leave it on the wall, the chance that somebody might need to grab it and use it is putting them in a high risk. So please. And if you ever notice that your personal extinguisher has lost a charge, you can look in the phone book under fire extinguisher companies. Several companies can assist you with recharging your extinguisher. A lot of the ones in businesses will have a tag on them. This means that annually a fire extinguisher company is coming out and checking this extinguisher out, making sure it's charged and ready to go. So annually somebody is physically touching this extinguisher and making sure it's in good working condition, but it would be helpful if you ever notice anything wrong with your extinguisher that you notify, somebody that can get that fixed immediately. We actually teach an acronym that helps you remember how to use the extinguisher. It's very simple, and the word is PASS. PASS stands for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. PASS. First thing that you want to do is pull this safety pin out. This extinguisher will never work until you pull this pin out. Be sure you're not depressing the top portion of this handle at the same time because you're just pushing and pulling against yourself. So pull this pin out and discard it. You do not need the pin. Then you're going to aim the nozzle. You always want to aim at the base of a fire. It's very important that you understand what the base of the fire is because even though flames may be coming up out of that fire, out of the base of the fire, you can knock those back, but until you get the agent on the actual base of the fire, it will not be extinguished. So please understand that if you have a trash can that's on fire, that something inside of it is on fire, flames may be coming out of that trash can and you can knock it back, but until you get that agent inside that trash can, the fire is not actually going to go out. So be sure that you always aim at the base of the fire. So pull, aim, squeeze. You're going to squeeze this trigger. It will break a seal on the canister and the agent will be pushed out. Pull, aim, squeeze, and then we ask everybody to sweep so that you're sure that you cover the whole base of that fire. You want to be sure that you don't get tunnel vision, spray in one spot, which could easily spread the fire side to side. You want to keep a distance of about 8 to 10 feet when you encounter a fire and you're going to use your fire extinguisher. And that's because you never know how much pressure is inside the extinguisher, how you're going to react, or how the fire might react. So if you start a good distance of 8 to 10 feet away, start spraying, then you can work yourself up to that fire as you get a little more comfortable. You always want to leave your back to an exit, and this is very important. Fire grows very rapidly. It can actually grow 7 times itself in 1 minute. So if you think about the time that it takes you, once you've discovered a fire, to find your extinguisher, to call 911, several minutes could have gone by. You want to be sure that you don't get overwhelmed. You need to keep your back to an exit. If that fire gets out of control, then you can get out. I highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with where the extinguishers are located throughout your building, wherever you work. And also, if you do have one at your house, I highly recommend that you go home tonight, pull it to the front of your cabinet, make sure that it's ready to be used. It needs to be easily accessible and readily available at all times.
Now that was the Asheville Fire Department, I believe, of North Carolina, and they did a great job. They presented a very good video, and I hope you see why. I just chopped a little bit off the beginning and a little bit off the end of their video and threw that into my training video. They do a great job. They did a great job of presenting generic fire safety, fire extinguisher inspection, and pass. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. It's a very simple principle. We had a fire once on a job that I was on, and we used about 80 fire extinguishers to put the fire out. And we were actually just trying to control it until the fire department got there. We were safe. We did everything correctly. My guys were trained well. We did everything as well as we could. Problem is, about a quarter of the fire extinguishers, once we did the inventory, about a quarter of them, they mashed down the handles without pulling the pins. They mashed the aluminum handles down. Pull, and then aim, squeeze, and sweep. Pull. Remember the past ditty. It could literally be life or death in your situation. Ours wasn't. We always had the ability to run away if we needed to. Now, let's take a look at some regulations, because that fire safety video is generic public announcement fire safety video. We need to focus more on OSHA 1926 fire safety. Let's take a look at that now. 1926 150A1, the employer shall be responsible for the development of a fire protection program to be followed throughout all phases of the construction and demolition work. And he shall provide for the firefighting equipment as specified in this subpart. As fire hazards occur, there shall be no delay in providing the necessary equipment. This one's pretty simple. It's the employer's responsibility. You don't see on here general contractor. You see employer. And all over this, you're going to see employer, 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 employer. This is the employer's job. There's one place where it's the project's job, and we'll get to that. But this is the employer's responsibility to have this firefighting equipment. So in as much as an area that we are working in, what is in our capacities, what is within as the employer, what is within our scope of being able to manage. Now that's a whole bunch of fancy words, and what I'm really trying to say is, let's say you are the carpenters on a project. Okay, this is 1926. We're looking at construction. You're the carpenters that have been brought in. Should the carpenters provide firefighting equipment for the welders to use? No, because that's their job. They're the employer for the welders. You're the employer for the carpenters, or you're the carpenter himself. You need to provide firefighting stuff for you to use. So if you're using anything that could create a flame, you need to have your fire extinguishers nearby. We'll get more into that later on. Just understand, you are responsible for your scope. 1926 150A2, access to all available firefighting equipment shall be maintained at all times. Access is pretty simple. It means if there's firefighting equipment, your employees need to be able to get to it. This is not letting your employees get to it. This is insanity. Now, if I could, I'd make every single place that there's a fire extinguisher look exactly like this directly below it. That way it's clear nothing gets put here. Make sure that your people can get to the fire extinguishers. 1926 150A3, all firefighting equipment provided by the employer shall be conspicuously located. Conspicuous is just a fancy way of saying obvious, and it needs to be obvious. Does this fire extinguisher look obvious to you, or is it hidden? I've seen a lot of places where I asked a supervisor or a foreman, hey, where's your fire extinguisher at? And he goes to open a drawer. And I'm like, whoa, no. It needs to be obvious, just standing there, where the fire extinguisher is at. 1926 150A4, all firefighting equipment shall be periodically inspected and maintained in operating condition. Defective equipment shall be immediately replaced. Periodically inspected. What this is saying is, look at the manufacturer's recommendation. Yes, there's a manufacturer for that fire extinguisher. How often are they saying to inspect it? How often is NFPA saying to inspect it? Because fire extinguishers do fall under National Fire Protection Agency. How often is everybody saying to inspect these things? And what you're going to find out is, when there's a situation that may arise that may lead you to believe that there's a defect to it, A. B, every 30 days. That's why when you look at your, and here's a tag, when you look at your tag, there's a place for you to sign off on them. Almost every single tag has a place for you to sign off on them. Sign off on your fire extinguishers. Do your inspections. 1926 150A5, as warranted by the project, the employer shall provide a trained and equipped firefighting organization, fire brigade, to assure adequate protection to life. Fire brigade is very clearly a unique situation, and there are two main factors that we're going to look at for this one. And this is going to be, what's the amount of chemicals that we have here? How quickly is this place going to go up? As well as, how long will it take the fire department to get to us? There are some very austere situations where you're working out in the middle of nowhere. How quickly will it take the fire department to get to our location? And even if the fire department takes an hour to get to us, what's going to burn? What's the real risk here? And so there's some things that need to be taken into account for this. As an employer, if you're moving a ridiculous amount of chemicals around, or you have a whole lot of combustibles, or if this thing goes, it's in a very dry area. If this thing goes, it could start a forest fire that could sweep through. If there's some real repercussions for what you're doing, you need to pay attention. You need to pay attention a whole lot to what you're doing. You may need to step up and have yourself a trained fire brigade. This is not a normal situation, so be very careful. Think about what you're doing. Talk to your company's competent person for fire safety if you have any questions on this. 1926 150 Charlie 1I, a fire extinguisher rated not less than 2A shall be provided for each 3,000 square feet of the protected building area or major fraction thereof. Travel distance from any point of the protected area to the nearest fire extinguisher shall not exceed 100 feet. Now, there's two different numbers in here, but one of them gets us more than the other. There's 3,000 square feet, but the one that gets us the most is the 100-foot travel distance. That means if you walk from one point to the next point to get a fire extinguisher, the nearest one to you, you shouldn't have to walk more than 100 feet. That's the one that usually gets us more than often. Double check your 100-foot. Make sure that you have fire extinguishers spread out pretty thoroughly throughout the job site. And if you're wondering what kind of fire extinguisher is a 2A, a 1A, a 10B, whatever, so on and so forth, look right here and you will see I have a 2A fire extinguisher right here. This is why the condition of the tags and the original manufacturer labels on that fire extinguisher are so important, because none of that information is worthless. If all of your tags are ripped off, you probably need a new fire extinguisher. Double check everything, make sure you're good to go. For the sake of this exercise, we are going to use a different fire extinguisher chart, but here's the 1926 150 F1 table from OSHA, and it's very hard to read. It's very hard to read any of this. Check your manufacturer recommendations, and I'll use a different chart to reference A, B, and C, what the types are. A is for ordinary combustible materials, B is for flammable liquids, C is for live electrical equipment, D is for combustible metal, and K is for commercial cooking equipment. The most common K fire extinguishers that I've seen have been silver, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be the case, especially your older refilled 10 times fire extinguishers. Pay attention to what the letters are, because they'll tell you what kind of fires they can be used. So if you have an ABC fire extinguisher, that's for ordinary combustibles, flammable liquids, and live electrical equipment. That's why it says ABC. It's for all three of those. Do not use it on combustible metals. Do not use it on commercial cooking equipment. We take a look at this map right here, and we've got a lot of fire extinguishers. We've got them all over the place, but here's the problem. What if I'm right here in this corner? Where's my nearest fire extinguisher? Well, but I've got an exit right there, but I have to walk from here all the way over to here. Is that 100 foot? I don't know because I don't know how big this building is. But this is where we start looking at 100 feet walking. Make sure you walk your routes. Make sure you're in tolerances. And why is this fire extinguisher smack dab in the middle of the floor? I can tell you why, because there's probably a pole going down right there, or there's a shelf ending right there. These are normal situations. These are normal occurrences to have one. In the map, it looks like it's just in the middle of the floor. It's not. It's at the end of a shelf. Make your maps look right. 1926 150 Charlie 1 IV. One or more fire extinguishers rated not less than 2A shall be provided on each floor in multi-story buildings. At least one fire extinguisher shall be located adjacent to stairway. The other place that we've been nailed for not having them on every floor is on the roof. Yes, during construction, the roof, because we're up there working, right? Whether it's electricians or it's the roof tarping guys or it's the framer, whatever, HVAC guys, you could potentially be up there. And if you're up there, they've got to have, and you're up there doing construction, they've got to have that fire extinguisher up there. It doesn't say when working, it says every floor. And that roof can absolutely be considered a floor if you're working up there. Again, remember, just because the building code doesn't call for it does not mean that OSHA is not telling you to do it. And yes, there are some rules that are much more strict for construction workers falling under 1926 than they are for the general public or the building owner. And it's intentional. It's because the majority of people that are dying throughout the course of this event are construction workers, not general public. That's why they want more protective measures for construction workers. So if there are people working up there, or if there's a floor that people could potentially work on, it's considered a floor. You need to have fire extinguishers up there. 1926 150 Charlie 1 VI. A fire extinguisher rated not less than 10B shall be provided within 50 feet of wherever more than 5 gallons of flammable or combustible liquids or 5 pounds of flammable gas are being used on the job site. This requirement does not apply to the integral fuel tanks of motor vehicles. 5 gallons of flammable liquid. And most of the time, if you've got compressed gas, you know what you're doing and you're already going to have a fire extinguisher there. But there is a very unique situation where I get into an argument or a discussion at least a handful of times throughout the course of a year, depending on what jobs I'm hitting. And it's this 5 gallons rule. And I'll walk onto a job and my guys will have, if they've got this 5 gallon red can right here, good to go. They know that they need a fire extinguisher for the most part. But it's when they don't have that and I look at them and I say, where's your fire extinguisher? And they go, what do you mean? And then I point over here and I say, well, that's flammable, that's flammable, that's flammable, that's flammable. And we start adding up all of the flammable liquids that they have. And if we can get to 5 gallons, where's your fire extinguisher? You have 5 gallons of flammable liquids inside of your Connex. Where's your fire extinguisher? And this is one that gets a lot of people. So be compliant. This is one of those ones where if you're going to have any kind of stock of PVC glue or anything that's flammable, pay attention to what you're doing. Because once you get to 5 gallons, it's not saying just fuel. It's not saying just gasoline or just diesel cans. It's saying flammable liquids. And if you add up to 5 gallons of flammable liquids, where's your fire extinguisher at, boys and girls? I mean, if there's a fire that catches right here, don't you want to be able to put it out quickly? And I don't mean one of these little tiny ones. This is a cute fire extinguisher, but it's not going to work very well for putting out a whole pallet or a whole box of PVC glue. Make sure you have the fire extinguisher that's going to put the fire out that you could potentially have. 1926 Charlie 1 VIII. Portable fire extinguishers shall be inspected periodically and maintained in accordance with maintenance and use of portable fire extinguishers, NFPA number 10A 1970. There are 4 maintenance cycles that every fire extinguisher has to go through throughout the course of its life. The first one is the initial use. It's you're about to bring this fire extinguisher out and you're going to set it right next to your generator where you're going to be doing some work and you need a power source, whatever. And so you bring it out, your welding machine, whatever. You need to do an immediate inspection on that. I call it initial use, but it's because you're using it. This is the first time you're using it today. You're not moving it. Does that make sense? It's your initial use for today, or your pre-use if you want. That's another term for it. And you need to inspect that fire extinguisher. I don't care who's signed off on it, up, down, left, and right. Check to make sure you're in the green. Look around, make sure that the tank hadn't been busted. Make sure that everything's good to go on this. Make sure it's serviceable. Inspection number 2, that's going to be your 30-day inspection. The epic mass majority of these fire extinguishers tell you to inspect them every 30 days. The next, all right, so this is one is pre-use. Next is 30-day. The next is going to be your 1-year mechanical inspection. And this is where a third-party company is going to come out and they're going to put a whole new tag on it because they're going to run it through some series of testing. The final testing, which this is when the majority of fire extinguishers get thrown away or get sent off to be recycled, is the 5 or 6 year. There is a born-on date on the bottom of most of your fire extinguishers, and they do expire. And this is whenever the whole thing needs to be opened up and it needs to be drained of all of its chemical and needs to be completely repacked. And for a 10-pound fire extinguisher, that's just not worth it. It's cheaper to buy a brand new one for the most part. You may have a good deal. I don't know. If you're in doubt, talk to the competent person for your company in regards to fire safety and ask them to come take a look. If you are the competent person and you're not sure, call one of these third-party testing companies for fire extinguishers. Get them out there. They'll be able to tell you exactly, nope, this is a 6-year, this is a 5-year, this one needs to go now, this one we can just restock and replace the mechanical on it. They'll let you know what needs to happen with this one. 1926-151A2, internal combustion engine powered equipment shall be so located that the exhausts are well away from combustible materials. When exhausts are piped to outside the building under construction, a clearance of at least 6 inches shall be maintained between such piping and combustible materials. Point your exhaust fumes away from combustible piles, and you think, well, of course, what kind of idiot would do that? Yet time and again, my outside field crews will put a generator blowing exhaust right onto dry grass. Or they'll put they'll put a gas can right next to the generator. Move the generator away from the fuel can. Keep everything that could catch on fire away from the generator. 1926-151A3, smoking shall be prohibited at or in the vicinity of operations which constitute a fire hazard and shall be conspicuously posted no smoking or open flame. 1926-151 Charlie 6 is portable indoor storages, and 1926-151 Delta 7, a clearance of 24 inches shall be maintained around the path of travel of fire doors unless a barricade is provided, in which case no clearance is needed. Materials shall not be stored within 36 inches of a fire door opening. Now, keeping the fire exits open and clear. Again, this is fire safety. Now, majority of construction, we don't really have posted fire exits, and I wish we did, but we have maps, and I'm sorry, the building's just not built yet. We don't have the signs up yet. We'll throw some paper up, or we'll throw some cardboard signs, maybe even some plastic signs up, but in the end, the big fancy exit signs, they're just not up yet. We're literally building the building. That being said, as these things do get built, keep the fire exits clear. As the emergency access and egress routes get established, keep them clear. 36 inches. There should be a path all the way around the job site. If you're blocking that, you're impeding on people's safety. You're blocking them from being able to get out if there's a fire, if there's an emergency, an active shooter, a tornado, whatever the case is. You, as the worker, are blocking these people. If you're the supervisor and you're telling, just throw the boxes over there, you're blocking people from getting to safety, and there is countless lawsuits of building owners, of companies being sued for deaths that were caused or a contributing factor to a fatality during an emergency. Tons of them. You just go look. Now, there is one situation that I've run into a gazillion times, and that is we're working right here. Like, let's take this emergency exit sign. Could this be an occupied building? Sure, could be. But quite often, especially with 10 different trades running all around the building, things get broken during construction. We just put this sign up 2 weeks ago, and the drywallers come by and knock it over. So we have to get in this area, right? So we take our ladder out, we set it up right here. Whoa, stop. Look at this guy, okay? If somebody opens up the door from the other side, they're going to knock this guy off the ladder, right? Now, what if it's an emergency? And this is where we start getting into, okay, we're working here, but we're blocking. Like, we have to get this work done right here in this emergency exit row. So what do? One of my favorite crews that I've ever had in my entire life, I walked up and I looked at what they had set up, and I was like, what is that? And the foreman looked at me, he's like, well, I don't want my guys getting hurt. And what he had done is he had taken a piece of cardboard. He literally just cut a piece of cardboard off of a box. And at home the night before, or maybe it was the week before, he said he did it that night before, but at home the night before, he printed off this and he stuck it on that cardboard and he stuck that on a cone and he stuck that in the doorway to where nobody would be walking down that aisleway. Now, there's other ways you can do it. You can put up danger tape and caution tape, but again, what are you telling people? What are you alerting them to? Are you telling them that, hey, there's somebody on the other side of this exit? Or are you just telling them be careful for some unknown reason? Because remember, you could potentially be on the other side of the door where they can't see you. Now, if you have a little glass window, maybe they'll see you, but just putting caution across the door, how many times have you crossed caution tape without even looking? You're not supposed to, but how many times have you done it? And that's exactly what's going to happen. People become, on job sites, caution tape and danger tape are used so much that people become immune to it. They become blind to it to where they just pop the tape and keep going, and they'll open that door right up into your ladder while you're trying to repair the exit sign, and boom, now you have that falls from a ladder. Hopefully you don't get injured. So this is literally a solution that took one of my foremen. It took him, and he did it completely on his own, and I gave him absolute credit for what he did. But this is a solution that cost him one piece of PVC that was scrap anyways, one piece of cardboard that he cut off of a box, and 10 cents worth of ink and paper. It was a beautiful solution. We had 100 cones sitting around. I'm gonna grab a cone. It was a very simple solution, but it did something beautiful, and it was that we don't aim for OSHA. We aim for a higher bar. OSHA is that low bar. We aim for a higher bar, and I promise you, as a company, as an employer, or as an employee, or as a foreman, if you aim for that higher bar to keep your people safe higher than OSHA, you're going to do pretty good. You're going to do pretty good. Things will happen, but they won't be anywhere near as bad as, well, if you just aim for that low bar. If your GC complains about you putting up the caution tape with tape on the ends, because it's finished product or something like that, that's fine. These are metal hooks, and they're dirt cheap. As you can see, Amazon, $15.99 for a 12-pack. I'm sorry, this isn't the 80s where we couldn't get stuff anymore. This is $15, and you can put that caution tape up. Doesn't even hurt the product. Oh, but the metal, whenever it clinks onto the metal doorway, it's causing a chipping. Good, put tape up there first. There's a million things that we can do to get caution tape across that doorway to prevent someone from walking through. There are solutions out here. So put something up if you're blocking an emergency exit for any kind of real time. Like if it's 10 seconds, okay. But if you're blocking it for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, a minute, you need to let your GC know, let your company know, let your foreman know, let your GC know, hey, we're blocking the emergency exit for between 4 and 5 o'clock today. We'll be blocking it for about 10 minutes because we have to fix that sign. Okay, good to go. What that does is what if the fire marshal decides to show up? You know, the famous fire marshal that everybody loves. What if he decides to show up right then and there? And he's tough. He's already been pissed off because of 10 different GCs have already done something crazy. You're the last job site on the stop today. And he's in a bad mood. And he sees you blocking the fire exit. Could he get you for it? Theoretically, yeah. You're blocking a fire exit. And that's where you don't want to let your GCs get blindsided. You don't want to let your company get blindsided. You don't want to let your foreman get blindsided. So employees, make sure that you're telling your supervisors. Supervisors, make sure you're telling your general contractors, hey, man, we're going to be blocking the fire exit. We've got to repair that sign. There should be some lenience given there. And that way, if the GC does get that call from the fire marshal, the GC can turn around and be like, hey, whoa, that was a broken fire exit sign. We were restoring it back to good condition. We had signage up. What's your problem, sir? Right? We were repairing emergency equipment. They're not blindsided. Okay? 1926 152 Alpha 1, only approved containers and portable tanks shall be used for storage and handling of flammable liquids. Approved safety cans or Department of Transportation approved containers shall be used for the handling and use of flammable liquids in quantities of 5 gallons or less, except that this shall not apply to those flammable liquid materials which are highly viscous, meaning hard to pour, which may be used and handled in original shipping containers. For quantities of 1 gallon or less, the original container may be used for storage, use, and handling of flammable liquids. Does this say 1926 Construction Depot? No. This says Home Depot. So when you buy these gas cans from Home Depot, guess where they expect you to use them? At your home. These are the gas cans that are going to comply with OSHA regulations, not these. So if I ever come onto your job sites and I point to that plastic gas can in the back of your truck and you tell me that's a personal tool and I turn around and say if it's on the job site it's not, we have a problem. Oh, well, I never pull it out. I don't care. It's on the job site, right? I'm not talking about the parking lot. I'm talking about on the job site. Gentlemen and ladies, please stop bringing these plastic cans that completely do not comply with OSHA regulations on the job sites. Keep them off. Just because you bought it at a place that sells tools does not mean it's acceptable, or nor does it meet any kind of OSHA regulations. It must have the mesh screen, it must have the flash arrestor. 1926 155I safety can means an approved closed container of not more than 5 gallon capacity having a flash arresting screen, spring closing lid, a spout cover, and so designed that it will safely relieve internal pressure when subject to fire exposure. The last thing we're going to talk about is fire extinguisher selection, and there's no real true regulation that straight up points this out, so we're going to be very generic here. There's all kinds of sizes of fire extinguishers. If you are operating a motor vehicle, at the very least, you need one of these small fire extinguishers. I'll take that. If you have a Connex storage area kind of thing, usually your 10-pounders will be good to go. But if you're operating with an open flame that could potentially catch a whole bunch of stuff on the job site, including the fuel container that you're using, could catch it all on fire, you need a big fire extinguisher. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen somebody walk out with a small 3-pound, 5-pound fire extinguisher, and they have a welding torch and they're going to go cutting stuff. And they cause a fire, a small fire, but they cause a fire. They go to use that little tiny fire extinguisher. It puts out about half the fire, and then they got to start stomping. Why are we skimping on fire safety? Like, fires sweep the nation. This is one of those things that since the dawn of mankind, whether you believe in creation or you believe in evolution, doesn't matter. Human beings have fought fire for literally since we stepped foot on this earth. Why are we skimping on fire safety? This makes no sense. Get a fire extinguisher that can put out the fire that you might cause, whether it's your storage area or it's the giant propane torch that you're about to use. Okay? Take care of your people. From the Safety Tavern, I hope you all stay safe and God bless.